Last week I told you all that I would try playing some games on TieGem, and I couldn't find any more TieGem games. I would queue up and no games would appear, and I don't know what happened. I used to be able to find games on TieGem back in the day, but maybe there was a big exodus of people who left because I heard there was a thing where TieGem started allowing people to pay for using like AI assistants, which is really weird for a Go server to do. And I mean, it's understandable that people may not want to play on a server that allows something like that. Maybe that's the reason. Maybe there's some other reason. I don't know. But I'm back on Fox, and I've started grinding out the Fox games again, and it's been fun because I feel like playing on Fox feels a little more casual to me than OGS. I don't know why, but OGS, maybe it's just the time control, but it just feels a little more try hard, and being able to just hop in and into a game so quickly on Fox just makes it, you feel even more casual than normal. And I've been enjoying my Fox games, and I've been trying to amp up the volume of the number of games I've been playing as well. So hopefully that leads to some more Go improvement. Welcome to Start Point, the show about Go for Go fans away from the board. And if you're an honest and proper Go player, this may not be the episode for you, because today we're talking about playing dirty. I'll start with what happened, recently in one of my games that made me think about this topic for this episode. So I was playing a game, and it was nearing the end of the game, and I didn't know it. I thought I was ahead, but apparently I was pretty behind. But in any case, I was kind of eyeing this one spot on the board where the group was alive, but there was a tricky tiny bit of Aji. I don't know if you could call it Aji, because it's not technically Aji. It's like you could potentially misread that situation if a certain move was played and realize that that group could die if you don't play there. And I was eyeing this spot, but I was making sure not to play there because I didn't want to give my opponent any idea that there was something tricky going on in that group of theirs. So I was just waiting for that Aji to activate, and I was just kind of playing endgame here and there, and I'm waiting for my opponent to play in that area first before I respond and see if that kind of allows a slip up in my opponent's game. But before we get to that area, when we're playing endgame in Dame, my opponent requests to go to counting. And thinking that I'm ahead, I accept. I'm like, okay, fine. We don't have to, I don't have to find out if my opponent will read that section correctly or not. I'll just, if I'm winning, I'll end the game here. And I accept the counting, and I noticed that I'm losing by 15, 20 points. So this is something I do have to work on. And it's harder for me, in a faster time game. But I'm losing by 15 to 20 points. And I'm like, oh no. I decline the count. I say, like, look, I'm not going to accept this score. And I just play random Dame on the board. And I'm playing the Dame on the board, and sure enough, like a couple moves in, my opponent plays in that area that I was looking at. I respond and play the Dame right next, or I connect. I don't know what I was, I played the move that looked like it made the most sense in response to my opponent's moves. But that move was Sente, and my opponent had to respond to that move for that group to live. But my opponent played Dame somewhere else, and that was a huge mistake because I then played out the killing sequence in that area and captured 27 stones and totally turned the tide of the game. I felt, okay, I have to admit, like, it was really nice to win that game, but it is a little dirty, right? Like, I accepted the count, and then I said, never mind, and then I waited for my opponent to make a huge mistake. And if I didn't think I was winning earlier, I would have declined the count before going to counting. But I think the fact that I checked the score is part of why it feels a little more dirty to me. But that kind of made me think about like, all the different ways to play dirty in the game of Go. And it's what inspired the topic of today, playing dirty. And I came up with a whole bunch of different ways you could play dirty in this game. And I even coined a bunch of terms for them too. So buckle up and we'll get right into it. But before I start naming the little techniques that you can introduce to your game, I want to make it clear what, playing dirty is, because I want to make a distinction between dirty play versus illegal play. Let me put it this way. Dirty play is stuff that's totally okay in terms of the legality of the rules, and it's technically not illegal. It's allowed, things that you're allowed to do. For example, on the Fox server, Fox, like on online Go servers, they have their own rules on what you're allowed to do and what you're supposed to do and things like that. And they have a whole system of moderators or things like that. On Fox, there's a really convenient like AI counting, like referee feature. I don't know if you guys know about this, but if your opponent refuses to go to counting over and over and over again, and it's clearly the end of the game, you can click this AI referee button, and that will lead you to enable this kind of computer that comes in and just takes over the score and says, hey, this game is over, and you win or you lose. And that's a really convenient feature to have. But again, like what I'm trying to say is playing dirty is just kind of little sneaky things you can do during the game that are within the confines of the rule. We're not talking about cheating in any way at all. And so, is it okay to play dirty? Let me put it this way. If playing dirty was the difference between winning and losing for you, would you rather win that game or play quote unquote respectably? That's a question that you may answer one way, and then during the game you may answer another. A lot of people kind of have problems with undos and how to use undos, and that's an OGS feature. I don't think there's any way to undo a move in the Fox Go server. And so this is a question that we all have to deal with at some point as Go players. I personally take no offense when someone tries something on me, like, tries to pull a fast one on me and plays a little bit of a tricky move. And it feels like I'm sparring. I feel like I'm defending, trying to beef up my toughness. And you need to not only play correctly in terms of the general strategy and flow of the game, you also have to defend yourself against these little tricky little things that are not technically proper Go. And I just can't refuse capturing stones. Capturing stones is still such a great feeling, and you can't, it's like as you get stronger, you have less and less opportunities to capture stones. And so any opportunity that I get, whether it's through a little sneaky play or not, I'm going to take it. So I want to get into the little dictionary of dirty plays that I came up with here. The first one being something that relates to what the story that I just told you about the game that I just had. I'm calling it false Gote, meaning it's not Gote. Like you're making a Sente move look like it's Gote. So like when I play that move that's clearly Sente to me, because if they don't respond, they're gonna die. I know the sequence after the move I play will lead to death. Then that's a Sente move, right? They need to respond or they'll lose the game. But making it look like Gote, so making it false Gote. So what you do is you don't play the Sente move. You don't play the Sente move automatically and see if your opponent responds. You wait and you don't play it. And instead of playing it first, you wait for your opponent to play in that area first and induce the move that you're thinking of that is Sente. And so your opponent plays the area, and then you say, oh, this is just a response to your move. This is totally not Sente. It's just my Gote move in response to what you played. And that's how you're playing it off. But in reality, it's a Sente move against them. And so by sneaking in that little false Gote there, you can get in a Sente move and see if your opponent may not notice that it is Sente, and you get another move in that area and possibly kill a huge group of stones like I did and win the game. This next one isn't a term that I came up with, but it's just trick plays in general. So trick plays I would consider to be things like if your opponent plays incorrectly in that sequence, it leads to a huge advantage. I personally don't know any trick plays because they just seem like obscure joseki that just don't really come up. Even if you take the time to learn the trick play, like it feels like it doesn't really come up enough for that to like really be relevant. And I feel like it's more worth it to just learn actual joseki. But I want to make a distinction between good trick plays and bad trick plays. Good trick plays are kind of like, I mean, by nature, they're trick plays and not joseki because they're not proper and they're not optimal. Otherwise, they would just simply be joseki. But they're trick plays because you're playing this kind of off joseki move, hoping your opponent will screw up the response to that move. But the risk for trick plays is typically if your opponent successfully defends that trick play, then you may become at a significant disadvantage. And I would consider that to be the type that is the bad trick play, where if your trick play fails and you are set way behind because of it, then I would suggest don't even think about doing things like that. That will really hinder your game. I think trick plays that are kind of more acceptable to use are ones where even if your opponent knows how to defend, you're not at a significant disadvantage and you haven't really lost much. I think these, you may even argue they're not even trick plays, but I think this kind of leads into the next dirty go strategy that I have coined, or maybe not coined, but booby traps. So booby traps, I would say, are like trying to leave as many like vulnerabilities in your opponent as possible and holding back from playing sente moves all around the board, because later on that creates more opportunity for your opponent to miss and mess up and not respond correctly to sente moves. And actually, in general, I would say that not playing sente moves that don't benefit you directly is actually one of the best tips that I learned while improving. When you are playing and you see sente, when you're kind of like trying to get a feel for the game, you'll start to like really want to play all possible sente moves that you can, because it just feels good to force your opponent to do things, but it's not always right to do that. Sometimes you do want to use your sente moves and get the value from it right away, but if there's no direct benefit for you, you shouldn't be playing sente moves. You should just move on into Nuki. And so booby traps, I would say, is like leaving behind as many precarious situations as possible for your opponent and creating like the most unstable positions for your opponent so that it creates the most likelihood that your opponent will mess up and possibly die or something like that. If you do this, then your opponent can actually do one of two things in terms of following for your trap. One of them is if you obviously like play that move later on and your opponent doesn't realize it, and it's just like the time crunch is there and they forgot about that like weakness that they left earlier in the game, and you are able to kill a bunch of stuff. Or they can even just notice what you're trying to do, leaving a very dangerous spot for them, and they may fix that in Gote. Just because you left a dangerous spot for them doesn't mean that they need to defend right away, but they may be nervous about it and they may just add a stone there because they're not sure and they need to fix in Gote. And leaving all these quote unquote booby traps around also can work as co-threats. So this is like not really half dirty play, half not. I would say the dirty part of it is to on purpose make it super precarious. But in general, it's a good tip to just not play sente moves that you don't need to play. The next one is empty threats. This is like making the opponent take a Gote move by uncertainty. This is what I'm talking about when you leave all the booby traps around and they kind of fix it unnecessarily. Sometimes you're able to get away with playing in a way where it looks like Sente, and you kind of play this game of chicken with your opponent, and they play a Gote move because it just looks kind of scary, even though there's nothing there. So the theme of all these like kind of dirty plays that I mean, they're so far the way I've been describing them, they're not super dirty, but the theme is really just opting for more dangerous looking moves for your opponent, even when it's technically there's nothing wrong, and just kind of psyching your opponent out with those kinds of moves. And so like if you're able to just kind of play a move that looks a little scary sometimes, your opponent you may be able to gain an advantage from it, even though it's not actually a threat. And so sometimes empty threats, they do benefit you, even though it's not proper Go. The next one, I'm calling it a tempo trick. This is definitely a little dirtier than the other ones I've mentioned. This is like playing tricky move, like using the time and manipulating the timing of your moves to kind of mess with your opponent. So it's like when you play a tricky move, or you think about a tricky move, and let's say that you have a move that you want to play against your opponent, but you know it doesn't work, but then you know it's very difficult to see how to defend against it. If you spend a lot of time on that move and then you play it, your opponent will be like, well, this person spent like a Byoyomi period on this. I don't know why he's playing there, but I'm going to spend some time too. I'm going to see why you spent so long on this move. And they may pick up why you did that, and they may be able to defend it correctly. But if you're playing other boring moves and you're able to sneak that move into a situation where you're just kind of playing normal moves and you all of a sudden play quickly on that move, they may respond quickly and they may mess up that situation as well. So oftentimes when our opponents play quickly, we play quickly, and this is a skill we need to develop as Go players. We need to learn how to set our own tempo and our own pace. Playing quickly often looks like you haven't given a move much thought, but to use this tempo trick, you have to think about a move for a long time without playing it. And then when you play it as if you haven't thought about it much, which includes usually playing pretty quickly. That's a pretty sneaky way of trying to psych out your opponent with the way we play Go. Totally not illegal, and you're able to do that, but it is a little bit devious. And my final dirty play that I have here is using your opponent's habits, and this is very much playing to the fact that Go is a duel. It is a game between two persons, and your opponent will have certain characteristics about their play, and throughout the game, and maybe it's just because you know this person and you know this player's play style and you can do this because of that. But oftentimes you can learn about an opponent throughout the course of a game. And you can learn, okay, this person really likes to cut, for example. And so you can kind of predict, okay, what this person may do in response to these moves. Does this person like to back off a lot? Does this person like to cut a lot? Does this person tanuki often? Does this person respond often? And you can learn the style of a player throughout the game. And by the time you get to the mid game, you can kind of assume certain things about your opponent. And let's say in that example, your opponent, you know that they like to cut things whenever you leave a cut open. And you find a situation where a cut leads to a bad result for them. So what do you do? You invite the cut. You play the move that makes that cut look tempting because you know this opponent likes to do things like that. And so using your opponent's habits is a big part of the game that we don't really think about normally as Go players, because a lot of Go players, Well, we like to think of ourselves as students, as people who play respectably and honorably, and that is really good to do. But let's say that we have this school of Go where everybody's playing respectably and honorably, and then they go out into the world and they play the scrappy, dirty players, and then they get demolished by all these tricks. So it's our responsibility as Go players not to just be aware of the proper moves, but I think we need to also be aware of how to control the kind of sneakier plays that can happen on the board. Now, earlier I made a distinction between dirty play and illegal play, but I want to also mention actual dirty play. Like the dirty play that I mentioned earlier in the episode, maybe not dirty play, maybe it's more something like sneaky or kind of tricky play. Because I think there's another category of play that is actually like real dirty play that I do not condone. For example, making noises to annoy your opponent, or saying things that provoke your opponent and laughing at their mistakes. Or like in the example of Hikaru no Go, when Yuki Mitani taps a stone on the board to make his opponent think that a move was played when it was really not. I think these things are especially deceptive and actually dirty things. Or not deceptive, that tapping the stone on the board thing is definitely very deceptive, but kind of provoking your opponent and trying to, rile them up by annoying them and being rude, I think is actual dirty play that is just not acceptable for any Go player to try to do. Keep the play on the board, I would say. Keep the play on how you play the stones and things like that. I think anything on the board is fair game. And even for those plays, it's a huge disclaimer here. Like, don't depend on that kind of thing. Like, don't focus on it, right? This is not the way to rank up. This is not the way to improve your game. These are just kind of little techniques that can add a little extra sauce to your games to earn a couple more wins, but it's not going to really lead to fulfillment and improvement in the long run to focus on trying to trick your opponent. I think that, I wouldn't be as bold with the moves I play on an over-the-board game. I think the fact that I'm playing online lets me kind of be a little more free and try things here and there that I wouldn't normally do, and just experiment and see, what my opponent can fall for. And that's going to be my 2 cents on top of all that dirty play stuff. And now it's going to be time for the DDK Advice Corner. And the tip of the day is develop your killer instinct. Now, I was always a more aggressive player, and I've always had to tell myself to pull back on my killer instinct. And I think most people, especially when they start off playing Go, they have a problem with going after too many stones, trying to capture too many things. I think that's the most common issue, but I've also seen people so concerned about their own groups that they don't even think to attack their opponent. They are constantly defending their group, and they are not thinking how dangerous of a situation is my opponent in. And it's definitely not good to attack incessantly. This is a habit that is very bad. But you should be looking out for moves that make your opponent especially uncomfortable. And those moves have great value. Just don't keep chasing that group until you realize you're the one behind. Killer instinct is not always about killing, but about threatening and making your opponent not comfortable with their position. And it's important for you to develop the instinct to make your opponent uncomfortable during the game, as much as it is important to make sure your groups are defended. Just don't look at one side of the coin. Make sure you are making your opponent uncomfortable. Develop your killer instinct. And now we move on to some Go news. Some great news I came across. Captivating the King is a new show on Netflix that just came out. And I think it's going to be like a weekly thing where they release episodes. Like a couple episodes should be released by now, but it is a Go related show. I'm not sure exactly how much how much Go is in the show, but it is a Korean drama set kind of in the old times, where there's kings and princes and things like that. And honestly, captivating the king sounds more like a chess thing, but apparently it's a Go thing. And let me read to you just a quick description that I found. Amid a royal and political power struggle, a king entangles with an intriguing woman whose hidden desire for revenge transforms into unintended love. What's with the revenge thing again? Like last week I mentioned all those shows with a revenge as a theme, and I don't know why we keep coming across this revenge motif when it comes to shows that feature Go. But from the trailer, it seems like it does feature Go quite a bit, and I'm excited to check it out and see what this show is all about, and I'm looking forward to it. In other news, the 11th annual North American Q Championships is open for registration. This is a tournament that will be held on the KGS Go server on Saturday, February 17th. It's going to be comprised of 4 rounds in the one day, and it's for youth. So the requirements are that you are under the age of 18 and you live in North America, and that you're a member of your country's national Go organization. So that's Canada, the US, and Mexico. The junior and senior champions of the top division will receive an invitation to play in the Redmond Cup, which is traditionally only open to Dawn-level players. And players who complete all rounds of the tournament will also be eligible for a $200 scholarship to the 2024 US Go Congress, courtesy of the American Go Foundation. And registration will close on February 11th. And on the other continent of Europe, similar things happening. European Go Youth Go Championship and Go Camp. So the Youth Go Championship in Europe will be from the 20th of March to the 23rd of March 2024. And before the championship, there will also be a Go Camp for all youth players that are interested from the 18th to the 20th of March. And teachers for this event will be Young Sun-yoon, 8P, European champion Andriy Kravitz, 1P, and Lucas Podpera, 7 Dan. So look at that for the youth players interested in participating in the European Youth Go Championship and Go Camp. In Asia, China wins the SG Golf Children's World Baduk Championship, which was held in Asan City in Korea. And the final match was Zhao Chenwan from China versus Pyo Hyun-woo from Korea. And so Zhao Chenwan from China defeated Pyo Hyun-woo. And these are like 10-year-old kids. China finished with a record of 4 wins and 1 loss. Korea finished with 2 wins and 3 losses, and Japan with 3 losses. Gold medal award for China was 5 million won, which is about $3,700. The Korean team in second place, as well as the third place Japanese team, both got prizes of 2 million won, which is $1,500-ish. Zhao Chenwan started learning Paduk at the age of 4, so that's where you got to be if you want to be at Asia's level, and these prizes are basically comparable to the top level stuff in the West. So that's the SG Golf Children's World Paduk Championship. And there was an award ceremony for the 7th Women's Kisong Tournament, which is a domestic Korean title. This was a tournament for women, in the final, I believe, was on December 12th between Kim Eun-ji and Choi Jung. Choi Jung took the initial lead with the first win, but Kim Eun-ji won the next 2 games, taking first, which is huge for her because she's been struggling to beat Choi Jung. And Kim Eun-ji, being younger than Choi Jung, has been trying to break that barrier for a very long time. And so as a first place winner, she got 50 million won, which is $37,000 approximately. Chejong in second place got 20 million won, which is about 15,000 US dollars. And third place was Kim Chae-young, which was 10 million won as the reward, which is about 7,500 US dollars. With this victory, Kim In-ji actually achieved the record of the shortest period to reach 9 dan and the youngest ever 9 dan in addition to winning the tournament. I don't know if that's within Korea or ever. I don't think it's ever, actually. Actually, I don't know. Hopefully I can find out that for you guys at some point. But the more information about the tournament is the Kisong tournament, Haesong Women's Kisong tournament, which is the largest scale among the Korean domestic women's individual events. And their time control was 1 hour main time with 3 periods of 40-second byoyomi. An update on the 48th Kisei. On the second round, Ichiriki Ryo won against Iyama Yuta to tie the series at 1-1. So this is a Japanese domestic title, and it is a best-of-7 series. And the third round will be held on January 27th to the 28th, which just happened for you guys. So I'm a week behind on reporting for this, but I'll keep you updated. It will be held at the Hotel Senime Monogatari in Nikko City, Japan. Again, this is the Kisei, the Japanese domestic title. So Iyama Yuta and Ichiriki Ryo tied at 1-1. And with that, we're going to go right into listener mail. All right, we got a few chunky listener mails this week, and why not? Let's get right into them. First off, Buzzsaw writes in, I enjoyed your recent episode in which you mentioned spaced repetition as a technique to study Go. I thought your listeners might like to see this technique in action. Guo Zhuan's Internet Go School is a great example. She has many lectures with problems that are presented to you with the spaced repetition method. I have problems on her site that I will not see again for 10 years, based on the number of times that I marked them as easy. There are others I will see tomorrow. I believe that there is still a 2-week free trial membership at the Internet Go School. The membership can be canceled in the first 2 weeks so your listeners can view the way Guo Zhuan uses spaced repetition at no risk. And Buzzsaw provides a link over here, and that's I think I remember this now. Like when I visited the Internet Go School, I remember there was a thing on spaced repetition, and it's yeah, I mean, of course, it makes a no-brainer for instructional Go site to be using this kind of science for their students to be learning different techniques in Go. So it's awesome to see that there's a Go school out there using spaced repetition as a technique. And then Bosa continues to write, a year ago I wrote a blog post describing the Internet Go School, which might help your listeners decide if they want to consider a trial membership. A link is provided here as well. I look forward to each new episode of Starpoint. Thank you so much for writing in, Buzzsaw. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with Buzzsaw, as I was already when Buzzsaw first emailed me, AGA ID number 8, otherwise known as Terry. She's very active in the Go community and many of the Go communities, and you're bound to run into her at some point. So thanks for writing in, Buzzsaw. Kit writes in, hi Justin, my name is Kit. I live in Wales and just started playing Go in November. Since then, I have become pretty obsessed with it, and all I want to do is play and learn. Last week, I was looking for something Go related to listen to while I work, found your podcast, and have now caught up on every episode. I've been finding it really interesting and enjoyable, and have so many responses to the topics and questions you raise. As I've listened to several months worth of podcasts in the past 10 days, I'm going back to some questions from earlier episodes. That's so exciting, Kit. I can tell that you have been bitten by the Go bug, because this whole thing about like being obsessed with it and all you want to do is play and learn, that is something that happens to someone who falls in love with the game of Go. And welcome to the world of Go, and thanks so much for listening to the podcast. And one thing that I found unexpected when I was doing this podcast was that people would find the podcast and they would commit themselves to listening to all the episodes. I didn't expect that for some reason. I thought people would just kind of jump in where I was and then just follow along from there. But it makes sense. There's a bunch of topics out there that they're just kind of timeless topics. It's not like there's Go News, which is kind of going to be irrelevant by the time you listen to it. But Anyway, Kit writes, my Go autobiography. The first time I remember hearing about Go was in the science fiction book The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula Le Guin, which I first read when I was a teenager. The character from Earth teaches Go to an alien character, who calls it an excellent, difficult game. Wow, man, this book sounds really interesting. It sounds just like that Emmanuel Lasker quote, except that the alien did not play Go to begin with. Kit continues, that intrigued me and put a kind of seed of interest in my mind. At the time, however, I disliked games in general, as I saw them as an opportunity to lose, which made me feel terrible. A few years ago, however, that changed completely and I got really into board games of all kinds. I've even played some of the obscure-sounding ones you named in the list of games that SGF files can record. I really like both Devon and Lines of Action. One game I never wanted to learn, though, was chess, as since childhood I've had negative associations of it being very serious and difficult and something you could be judged for being bad at. I guess this is the last remnant of my previous fear of games. Recently, a friend suggested that we play online together, and I said that I didn't want to learn chess, but I had been always curious about Go. He had played a few times in the past, so we set up a game and I was pretty instantly hooked. That's so funny that you refused to play chess because it was difficult and it could be something that you're bad at, and then you choose to play Go. I think all the Go players are kind of laughing inside. And as you've realized in your next paragraph here, the thing that felt most compelling to me was just how bad at it I was. I found it fascinating that I was so unable to see what was about to happen to me. I would think some of my stones were safe and be happily attempting to surround some of his, and then mine would disappear in a way that was totally mystifying. Realizing that there was something going on here that others could see and I couldn't made me determined to learn to see it myself. For me, the sensation of something going from a total fog of confusion to starting to become meaningful and legible is one of the most satisfying ones available. It feels magical, like a scene from a fantasy book or film where a character stares into a pool and images start to form in the ripples, or they suddenly realize they can understand what the animals around them are saying to each other or something. That is such a good description of why I love to play Go, because it's not only that it's difficult. If it was difficult and everybody was bad at it, it wouldn't be interesting. But the fact that you're playing and you have no idea what's going on, and your opponent, who's better than you, somehow is able to win in this super mysterious way is what's so compelling. You want in on that secret knowledge, don't you? I think you get it. Next writes, my understanding of Go is still very rudimentary, but also already looking at a board, I can see so many patterns and so much meaning in it when 2 months ago, it would have just looked like a random scatter of stones. I actually have several more things I want to respond to, but we'll leave it there as this is already very long. Maybe I'll write some more another time. Thanks a lot for making the podcast. I'm sad now that I've caught up with you. I'm only going to be able to hear one a week. All the best, Kit. Well, thank you so much for your long comment, and please do write in. That was a very interesting read, and I wish you luck on your Go journey. It's really exciting, and being in this kind of initial stages of the game is actually a really exciting time, and it's an opportunity to learn a lot of new things. So thanks for writing in, Kit. Next, okay, I'm going to try to say this name, Yarosław Yushak. Okay, I think that's how you say it. Writes in, says, hi, I like your series a lot. When I saw your channel for the first time, I thought there are not many topics you can just talk about, or any topics related to the game of Go seem to be strictly related to the board position. Sooner or later, you need to put the stones on the board and present your ideas. It surprised me a lot that you are able to find so many interesting subjects to elaborate on, and all of them are really enjoyable to hear and think about later. Yeah, I honestly have no idea, how, I honestly am surprised myself. I don't know where this will go from here. I feel like I've covered so many topics. I don't know what will come. I'm really curious, what the state of the show will be in, a year from now. Continuing on, still, I think it might be difficult at some point for you to find another topic, so I decided to suggest one: how to get people interested in Go. That's actually been on my mind. That's definitely one on the list to do. So that's definitely going to be a future episode. So wait for it. Continuing on, personally, I founded a local Go club in my city for over 20 years ago, and it was very difficult for me to find any club members. After a few months, I gathered a few people and we started to meet regularly in a youth cultural center. There was an anime fans club there and used Hikaru no Go to get their attention, but it didn't work that well in the long term. I'm not surprised. I mean, like, you know, as much as you're into anime, it's not like you're gonna like sit down and start like liking the game. I'm not sure. Continuing on, after a few years, we closed the club because of many reasons. Recently, I decided to reopen the club, but even though there is internet and social media nowadays, back then the internet was still quite new, it is still so hard to convince people just to try. They don't want to hear anything about Go. We made club posters like Hikaru did, and hung them in our local university as well as some nearby schools, but not a single person showed up after a few months. That's so sad. That's been a real problem for the game. It's really hard to convince people. But I do want to give another shout out to Mission Viejo Go Club, because the guy who started that one, like, his commitment there to that club was to just sit in the Panera Bread by himself. He said, like, I'll sit here by myself every week if I have to, before people start showing up. And sure enough, people started showing up. And I think that kind of mindset really gets things going. Continuing. I think there might be more people like me willing to start some private initiative to start up a local club and teach others how to play. Maybe even organize some tournaments, but they encounter similar obstacles as me. I think it's a nice topic to talk about. Thanks so much for your suggestion, Yarosław Yushak. That is a big topic I will definitely try to cover. And it sucks that it's so challenging for us to promote the game of Go. And I think the fact that we are living in the online age makes it a little easier, but at the same time, maybe it discourages people from meeting up in person now that you can just stay home and do a bunch of stuff. So it's a double-edged sword. And our last listener mail of the day, it comes from Own Zookeeper Game 955, who writes, "Hey Justin, I've had a great time listening to the show lately. Thanks for consistently creating output. No problem. I had an observation which I found interesting and thought I would like to share with you. I've noticed that during Go tournaments, it appears very important to Go players for the Go clock to make a sound when they're about to time out. Doesn't matter if it's DGT, ING, game time, etc. One of the requirements for Go tournaments is that they beep when the time gets very low. The interesting observation is that it is the polar opposite with chess players. At chess tournaments, absolute silence is expected, and the idea of a clock making sounds to indicate the time when it is already clearly displayed is inconceivable. I even went ahead to test this observation. At the local chess club, there was a small blitz tournament. And when setting up the clocks in the beginning, I sneakily turned on sound. And lo and behold, at almost every table, the players got incredibly agitated by the clock making sounds. Shut up, I can see how much time I have left, someone said at some point. That makes me wonder, where does this difference come from? Is there a structural reason, or is it just purely random? And chess players are accustomed to the perk of quietness, while Go players clearly prefer the annoyance of beeping clocks for the advantage of not having to look at the clock during Byoyomi. I'd be curious to hear what you think. Thanks for writing in, Zookeeper Game 955. That is an interesting observation indeed. We as Go players, we need to know, like, how many Byoyomi periods we have left remaining. And I think it actually stems maybe from tradition, because back, in the day before these clocks were a thing, in the traditional Japanese tournaments, you'd have people, they still do in some of the tournaments, they have like actual people counting the seconds. That's what Byoyomi means, literally in Japan, is the counting seconds. So they would say 10, 9, 8, and that would be their clock. They wouldn't have a mechanical clock. Whereas chess, although I think it is, it's a newer game than Go, so I think maybe the timing of the appearance of these games makes a difference. That's only my theory, because when chess was becoming popular, I think the clock was kind of with it, right? If you have this mechanical clock where you can look at and see where the time is on it, then you can kind of avoid having a person sit there and announce the time. So I don't know, beats me. It's kind of an interesting thing though. I don't know how I feel about it. I like the Go clocks. I think I might have mentioned this in the Go clock episode, but I like the little abstract beeps rather than an actual seconds timer. So instead of like a voice saying 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I prefer like a single beep at 10 seconds and then like a beep every second from 5 seconds onwards. But I don't know, it also, like, I do feel the pressure sometimes. Like, sometimes when I'm playing and I hear the constant beep, I'm just like, I start panicking. So, I don't know, maybe I would want to try a silent Go game, seeing if that, like, would be good. Like, I don't know. You're giving me something to think about. Anyway, thanks for writing in, OwnZookeeperGame955. And the question of the week is, have you ever played dirty? What did you do? Or has someone done something to you that you thought was kind of dirty? What are your thoughts on this topic in general? Is it okay to play dirty or not? I want you to share your thoughts on this question. You can do that. Or if you have another Go-related thing that you want to share, Go story or question that you have, you can comment wherever you're listening, whether it's on Reddit or YouTube, or you can shoot an email to startpointbaduk@gmail.com. That's startpointbaduk@gmail.com. If you want to support the show, you can like and subscribe or follow wherever you're listening. If you're subscribed on YouTube, go ahead and hit the bell if you want notifications. And you can also leave a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Keep playing Go.